Hello, everybody. It's been a while. Welcome to the Hub World podcast. We are now returning. We returned to our regular season already, but this will be our first non E3 episode in quite a number of weeks. Um, I will tell you about that in a second after I introduce ourselves. My name is Jules, as you know. Today I'm joined by,
Matteo.
And Gino.
and we are here to deliver our first non E3 episode in a long time, which we decided to do. One of our console essentials episodes, which maybe you've caught before. We've done our NES essentials, we did our SNES essentials, and we did our two-part N64 essentials, which was a bit of a crazy bloodbath, especially the second part of that episode. So you can catch those if you'd like. But just to give you an idea of what these console essentials are, is we break down what some of the best games are on a particular system. We talk about them, we talk about why I'd recommend them, and then we try to break down what the 5 most essential games on that system are, just based off of how we've talked about it. Some of the things that go into that is we want to recommend games that are somewhat accessible still. So for example, in our NES one, spoilers, one of the games we didn't pick was Duck Hunt, because we figured the only way that you could play that game the way it should be played is you do have to have a CRT TV and you have to have the NES Zapper. And so we were saying, well, that doesn't make sense to recommend to you nowadays. So one thing is accessibility. Another thing is just in general, how does it hold up nowadays? Can it be taken out of the context of its time and still be comparable to games nowadays? Is it worth that play? And then also we think about list composition. So we wouldn't want our whole list to have all Zelda titles or all RPGs, because we do want to give you a variety. So today we're going to be breaking that down for you with our first handheld essentials list, which we are doing the Game Boy Advance, a very beloved handheld system. Now, I'm sure some of you are wondering, why are we not doing the Game Boy or Game Boy Color? And the reason for that is we talked about it, and between us at the Hub World, we've only played maybe a dozen Game Boy Color or Game Boy games that we would even feel comfortable recommending to people. And we feel like there wasn't much of a discussion point around which ones we would recommend. So, while we could provide that for you, we don't think it's worth a podcast because there's just not much discussion there. Whereas Game Boy Advance is a much richer library, with a bigger variety of games, and especially games that can be played now and are pretty awesome. So that's why we chose to do Game Boy Advance instead. So we're skipping Game Boy.
Yeah, and especially with Game Boy Advance, we were talking before the podcast, and we're like, let's do Game Boy Advance. It should be pretty straightforward. I already had an idea of what I was going to select, but then when I looked at the library of games on the Game Boy Advance, I was thinking holy shit, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. I didn't realize how deep the library of games on the Game Boy Advance was.
Exactly. I was the same thing as I looked at the list of Game Boy Advance games. But just another thing, just before we head into this, just some other things to mention. This essentials list, we don't want you to treat it as us ranking games. When we come to the final 5, we're not going to rank them. We're just going to say these are the 5. And they're also being composed from the games we've played. So even if a game is well received or critically acclaimed, we are not going to recommend it or put it on our list if we personally have not played it. And that's just because these are our personal lists, and we're not trying to quantify what's better. We're just giving you a recommendation based off of what we've played. Now, something I think needs to be addressed before we begin this, and as we move forward into handheld, specifically Nintendo handheld essentials, is one thing that I think we need to define for our listeners is how Pokemon games are going to be handled. Now, I personally believe the partnered games can be classified as one game. So, for example, Pokemon Red and Blue would be classified as one game together. But Pokemon Yellow, the third version, because of its being differentiated, would not be grouped together. So you could put, hypothetically, we could put Pokemon Red and Blue and Pokemon Yellow as 2 separate things on a hypothetical Game Boy Color one, or we would pick between them. We won't put Pokemon Red, Blue, yellow together, because I think that creates too much of a powerhouse when you have the three versions together. I think it's either you take the duos, or you take the third version, or you choose to use them both as two separate slots. But I don't think we should group third version with the like original releases, because they do have some differences, and sometimes those differences are better, and sometimes they actually aren't. So I think that's how we should move forward with Pokemon.
I think so too. I agree with that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. Great. Then I think we're ready to begin. So we will do what we normally do. We'll kind of go in a speaking order. I'll start by recommending something, then Matteo will go, and then Gino will go. And we'll just create a list, a short list, talk about those games, and then at the end, we will determine what our top, like our 5 essentials are. So I'll start. So I think the first game I want to announce, the one, or not announce, I'm not Nintendo, but the first one I think I should mention, the one that screams out for me on this short list that I've created, and one that I feel I'm going to like very much fight for all the way through, is Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga.
Yes.
For those of you,
Yes.
yeah, for those of you who don't know what Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga is, it's the first game in the Mario and Luigi series, which is an RPG series developed by Alpha Dream, RIP.
Yep.
It is still arguably the best in the franchise. And I say arguably very much so. Not that it's not the best one, but like it could be. But it was the start of this. It was like, it's a game that's so Game Boy Advance. Like, I can't even stress how Game Boy Advance that game feels. Like, it's one of those games that feels so pure, like unique to the Game Boy Advance. And while it's been on DS and 3DS later, like when you look at like the library of Game Boy Advance titles, it's one of those things that started on Game Boy Advance and was like truly like unique to the Game Boy Advance. Sure, N64 had Paper Mario, but Mario and Luigi was kind of a bit more heavy on the RPG than Paper Mario was. It was a lot more involved and action based, and yeah, I don't know. I really love Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. It has fantastic cast of characters, has incredible humor, really fleshes out the Mushroom Kingdom. It was just, I never played it when it came out on Game Boy Advance, but I always wanted to. And then when I did play it, I was just like blown away because it is a fantastic game. So that's mine.
When I was making this list, one of the other things I noticed was the amount of ports and remakes of games that got put on Game Boy Advance. Personally, I will not be adding straight ports I'm not going to be nominating ports, so like none of the Mario Advance games, but remakes were very critical to my experience with the Game Boy Advance. And I think my pick for one of the best remakes of all time, and my all-time favorite game on Game Boy Advance, Metroid Zero Mission. That game was a complete remake from the ground up of the original Metroid. Like Metroid Samus Returns did to Metroid 2, Metroid Zero Mission basically, like, that's the definitive way to play Metroid 1. That's like no contest. Metroid 1 is slow, it's clunky, there's not a lot of features, not like there's a lot of story stuff that isn't in that game that was added by Zero Mission. Like a lot of the Metroid story that's been built up over the years was put into the remake. It added the Zero Suit Samus stealth gameplay, which I really, really liked. The combat and the pixel art are fantastic. It's very reminiscent of Super Metroid, and just that game to this day, it holds up so well. Like I love that game to death. Like honestly, the Game Boy Advance is so rich in Metroidvania games, and I think this is like the cream of the crop. Like it's one of the best. It's so good.
Now, I have a question. Or not a question, sorry, a comment. I do have a question as well, but I'll start with the comment. What I like about Metroid Zero Mission too is that, like, I love Samus Returns, and I'm very excited for Metroid Dread. But I would say Samus Returns and what it looks like Metroid Dread are almost like these modern Metroid games. They're a little bit different. They're not really like classic style Metroid. Whereas Zero Mission, what I love about it is it's like it feels fully like classic Metroid, like Super Metroid-esque, and I really like that. Like Metroid 1 isn't on. I literally just had this conversation with a colleague over lunch today, like literally, because he's a massive Metroid fan, and we were talking about Metroid Metroid 2 and Samus Returns and Zero Mission and was the fake remake AS2MR
AM2R. Yeah.
AM2R. We were just talking about it, and he was saying like Metroid 1 wasn't unplayable, like you could play Metroid 1, but Zero Mission is like the remake is so well done that it could be arguably the best game in the series. Like it's obviously like I still prefer Super, but like it's still like very like the quality of the remake is really really great. Yeah, I agree with you. The other comment I was going to make before Gino gives his nomination is, and I think that it's just a good time to talk about it since we're already talking about Zero Mission. Zero Mission wasn't the only Metroid game on Game Boy Advance. Metroid Fusion also was on Game Boy Advance. It's also a very strong game.
I'm going to interrupt you right here because that was my nomination for it, Fusion.
There you go. Go ahead, do it.
I stole Matteo's save file when he was playing Metroid Fusion on the on the Nintendo DS with the Ambassador program, and I have been very fond of that game ever since. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I knew Matteo was enjoying it before I stole it from him. I definitely had a lot of fun with it. And now that we have the Metroid Dread announcement, right? Like Fusion was the game that started all of those kind of like the okay, when is the next game coming out? And it's funny because like that game's been out for like what, 20 years? And we're now
Almost.
just getting a
18
sequel.
years, 19 years?
Yeah, 18 or 19 years, and we're just now getting a sequel to Metroid Fusion.
Yeah.
And like just to like go back and like continue the story from where Fusion left off, like you could see that like the ideas for Dread were just starting there. Okay, so you started the game off, Samus has been infected by some parasite, and the Galactic Federation, in order to save her, had to completely strip her armor off of her. But this parasite like infested the armor, and it would walk around the halls of the facility that Samus was at. They were pre-scripted events because like there was no AI or there was no proper system in place for this, just to be like randomly walking around in the level, kind of like how the Emmys are in Metroid Dread. But like there were pre-scripted events where this evil Samus suit was just walking around and it would murder you, or was just walking around being scary, and you knew that it was like, okay, do not engage. And the game even tells you just like, do not engage, you will die. And I just thought that was like, it's really nice to see that kind of system that they had ideas for back in the Game Boy Advance era actually coming to fruition now, all these years later. And the gameplay is tight. It was a fast-paced game. I think it came out before Metroid Zero Mission.
I believe so. I believe that they made Metroid Fusion. They made Metroid Zero Mission using Fusion's engine or whatever.
And honestly, it felt great. The power-ups were fun. The difficulty was fair. It was, again, Matteo said it before, like it was a renaissance for that genre. The especially because you could just like pick up this little Game Boy, and it had enough power inside of it, the same amount of power almost as a Super Nintendo, albeit the sound card wasn't as good. You had basically a portable console in your pocket. It was great.
Know what's hilarious though? What I find absolutely hilarious, just to speak to Metroid just again for 1 second as we right before we move on. So there was actually a third Metroid game on Game Boy Advance. There was NES Classic Metroid, which was an emulated version of the original Metroid game. Now, what I find hilarious about it is that classic version of Metroid came out on Game Boy Advance roughly 5 months after Zero Mission came out. So they released the remake of Metroid 1. Then 5 months later, like here on the same system is the old game. Now, that's not where it stops. It's like stupid, like a business decision wise. I don't know what Nintendo was thinking. If you beat Metroid Zero Mission, you unlock the original Metroid within Metroid Zero Mission. So they basically took Metroid 1 and they're like, this is already in a game we released earlier in the year, but we're going to sell it as its own game later.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I find that hilarious. Like, absolutely absurd.
I kind of remember seeing the original Metroid Classic out as like a kid at the video game stores and all that kind of stuff, and I'm just like, why is this here?
Well, they made it was the classics line of NES games that they just there were so many of them.
There's like 18 of them. I have the box version of the Zelda ones. Anyway, we should move on from Metroid for now. I'm sure we'll return to it. So I guess me again. I'm looking at my list. What do I want to say next? I know there's some games that I feel like only I'll say, so I think I'm gonna start with those. And I think I'm gonna kick off our Pokemon ones. And maybe this will become a whole round of Pokemon. I am personally gonna recommend what I think is the best Pokemon game on Game Boy Advance. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team.
I had that also.
Now, nothing against the mainline ones. Like I'm low key just kidding right now. But I have such a soft spot for Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, and I love the original Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. It just got remade on Switch, but honestly, the original version is better. I've played the remake, and the original is definitely better. And now I didn't play Red Rescue Team. I played Blue Rescue Team because at that point I had moved on to the DS and they had released Red Rescue Team and Blue Rescue Team, which were the same game, but one was on Game Boy Advance and one was on DS. But the reason I'm recommending it here is because I know we'll eventually get to DS Essentials, and I realistically don't think that Pokemon Mystery Dungeon has any shot of being on that list for DS. Not necessarily because the library is better, but because Pokemon Mystery Dungeon only gets better, at least in the next game, and then it kind of goes to shit. But anyway, I love Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. The first game made me cry, and I weeped at the end of that story. It's so sad, and it's just such a fun game because it puts you in the position where you play as the Pokemon, and not only are you playing as the Pokemon, but you are you as the Pokemon, and you get to like experience this world of Pokemon characters as they live in their own reality, and it's just so cute to see how all the different Pokemon interact within their own world, like Pelipper's being this like postal service, and you got like Gengar is like this big old bully, like he's not like threatening, he's just kind of like a bully. You got like Alakazam is like the wise like character. You got Kecleon has got a shop where he sells things, and like Kangaskhan has a bank, or sorry, not a bank. Kangaskhan has a storage unit, and Persian has a bank, and it's just so cool because like even like smaller Pokemon, like one of the Pokemon like part way through the game that you have to interact with, who's like the wise like sage, is Xatu, who like realistically in like the regular Pokemon games, Xatu isn't a Pokemon that has any relevance at all. But then you get to Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, they suddenly give him this role that's like interesting and fresh, and like it's just everything about that game was so fresh for Pokemon, and the gameplay was great, and there was so much to do, and I really appreciate the first Pokemon Mystery Dungeon for doing that. And like I said, the story was incredible. There was so much content. There were so many unique ways in which they used each Pokemon, and I think like at that time, because there were only 3 generations of Pokemon, it was very sustainable. Like they were able to really like do like every Pokemon really well. Whereas now I think it's become a bigger, it's harder to do Mystery Dungeon now because there's 900 Pokemon and it's just unsustainable. But I love Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, so that's my next recommendation.
Yeah, I'll continue the Pokemon discussion here. I'll nominate Pokemon Emerald. Pokemon Emerald's the definitive mainline Pokemon game on Game Boy Advance by default
Mhm.
almost, because I am of the opinion that the third versions are normally better than the original ones that come out, and Pokemon Emerald is no different. I'm just gonna lump it now into saying, just referring to the third generation of Pokemon. I feel like Gen 3 of Pokemon is when, like, that's like the cutoff. Like anything before that, I really don't think holds up very well, because Gen 3 is actually what added a lot of modern systems to Pokemon, like natures and abilities and stuff like that. And that's now we've had so many games with these things in it now, going back to red, blue, yellow, gold, silver, and crystal. At least for me, I find it really hard to go back to those games. And Generation 3 of Pokemon is I think it's my favorite gen of Pokemon. I love the region of the Hoenn region, the geography of it. I love a lot of Pokemon designs. I think the starters in Gen 3 are the best starters they've ever had in Pokemon. And like obviously Rayquaza is a phenomenal mascot Pokemon to have. So, and like I know, and I'm pretty sure all of us were going to nominate one of the Pokemon games. So I feel like instead of me just talking about it, I think we should all just talk about Emerald. Or if you think Ruby and Sapphire would be an over Emerald.
Emerald's the only one I had on my list, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Like I didn't consider any of the others personally. I think, like you said it, like Emerald is clearly the definitive. Like, if any third version is the definitive, it's Emerald. Like Emerald is
Oh
a
yeah.
fantastic version. Like it added so much to Ruby and Sapphire, and Gen 3 isn't my favorite. I don't dislike Gen 3, and we'll get into that in another podcast episode. But Emerald is a fantastic game, and it's absolutely should be here.
Well, it also fixed a lot of the problems back from the originals too, right? Because like think about it, like if you're playing Ruby and Sapphire, like if you're playing Ruby, Team Magma's base, it's in a water cave. It wasn't even in the volcano. Emerald fixed that. They put Team Magma in the volcano, which makes sense. They shared the same base, right? In Ruby Sapphire, and then Emerald correctly put Team Aqua in the original base, and they made it a completely new base for the Magmas. I thought that was just a nice touch, and obviously, like Rayquaza's better. You have the it was just more polished and like more thought went into it.
It was really great, and I think like Ruby in a way, just because of the differing teams, like the differing enemy teams and Ruby and Sapphire, there's almost like Emerald was allowed to have like more content because there was more they had to add to make both teams villainous.
From my memory of Gen 3, you had Team Magma and Ruby, you had Team Aqua and Sapphire. So in Ruby, the Aquas weren't as bad, or
no,
they were like
they were like helpful. They were good.
Oh, I'm getting confused with the Omegas.
Yeah.
Where and the Omegas they had the other version in there, and they were like trying to like the other version was trying to talk the other one down. Yeah. I'd be like, yo, you guys shouldn't be doing this.
In any case, the point is that there was a lot of content to make out of Emerald, and the other thing that lends itself well to Emerald is that it's the third version, but it's the first third version to happen in a generation where there were remakes, and it's the only third version to happen after the remakes. So like that's the thing is like Platinum came out right after Diamond and Pearl. Black and White 2 came out right after Black and White. And I know there weren't remakes that generation, but the point is Emerald not only got to add in things that happened in Ruby and Sapphire, but it also got to add in things that happened in Leaf Green and Fire Red, because it came like it was the fifth game of the generation rather than the third one. So it actually had a lot to like build into. So I think that helped in terms of creating content and like really making it fresh and big and like adding things. So yeah, I fully endorse Emerald here. Gino, do you have a nomination?
Okay, well I'm just taking a look at my list here, and I have well, like I think that we're in a lot of agreements right now, so I kind of want to go into one of my flavor picks, if that's okay. And I have a lot of really fond memories of Sonic Advance, and I would like to.
I was gonna ask. I literally have it because I've never played any of the Sonic Advances, but I've heard good things. I literally have on my list Sonic Advance ?
I had Sonic Advance on my short list.
Which one is the one you're putting on?
The first one.
The first one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that Matteo and I actually got to play a lot when we were kids. My cousin actually had it, and he couldn't really get past the first level all too much. And Matteo and I actually went out and beat the game. I think there was like 3 or 4 different playable characters. I think it was Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy. I played through that game as Knuckles first, and it was quite fun. Each of the characters had their own unique gimmick. Sonic was obviously got to go fast. Tails had his like the helicopter hover thing, and Knuckles could climb walls and glide and punch things. Amy, hammer, she could beat stuff up. Levels were good, music was great, and very easy just to pick up and play. Very fun. The sprite art was like the pixel art in that game was very good. It was just can't say enough good things about that game. Good
like was just quickly with Sonic Advance, I don't hear a lot of people talk about the Sonic Advance games enough. Sega has never re-released those games outside of like the Wii U Virtual Console, I don't think. All of them, honestly, all the Advance games are fantastic, and people need to play them, honestly. Like they're gems almost, like they're hidden gems in a way. I honestly think for the most part they're pretty comparable to other 2D Sonic games, like the original series. Like they're really, really good. And it's the modern Sonic art style too, which I really, really like. I can't say enough good things about them. Like seriously, just if you can find them, play them. They're fantastic.
Yeah, and they didn't even have like any of that drop dash stuff. It's not none of the like complicated things. It was just simple
Hmm.
and clean. Huh? No. Yeah.
No, no.
Unfortunately, that will not segue into a different game nomination,
Dang it.
as I have not played Chain of Memories on Game Boy Advance. But
Neither of us are, but
I do hope that it would be nice if a Sonic Mania 2 pulled in elements from Sonic Advance games. I guess I'll nominate one. I have two flavor ones, maybe three, depending on where we're at. But there's this one game that I played all the time on my Game Boy Advance. Now, I don't expect this game to go far, but I think it's worth mentioning. Yu-Gi-Oh! The Sacred Cards, which is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Game Boy Advance game that's based off the Battle City arc in the anime. So you play as a character who's a friend of Yugi and his pals, and you go around, you battle all the characters, you open packs, like build your deck, and you go through the story of Battle City. And I remember just being so immersed in it, like fighting those characters, like dueling like Merrick and dueling Merrick's bro. I can't remember his name.
Odeon.
Odeon, that's his name, and his sister, who I also can't remember her name.
Ishizu.
Shizu, there you go. Doing Kaiba and like Weevil and Rex and Mai, and like it was just cool, like as somebody who watched the anime, experiencing that and playing the game, and like the systems built into that game were really, really refined. And I'd played Yu-Gi-Oh games before that on PS1, on Game Boy, and like none of them felt like I was really having fun. Whereas this one was the first one I played where I was like, damn, this is a fun game. And even the new ones, like the new Yu-Gi-Oh games, I feel like I'm still not getting that same experience. Like it's not the same as like the experience I got with the Sacred Cards. Sacred Cards was just so good. Matteo, you are welcome to go.
Well, I think I think I'm going to take one of another major one off the list right now, and we need to represent more 2D platformers on here. And my pick for the best 2D platformer on the Game Boy Advance is one that I also don't think gets enough love by people, and also this series does not get enough love by Nintendo, and that's Wario Land. Wario Land 4 is my favorite 2D platformer on the Game Boy Advance. Because another Wario, like WarioWare, also came about in the Game Boy Advance, and basically Wario, aside from Wario Land Shake It and appearances in Mario spin-offs, is only there now. Like in Smash Bros, his default costume is the WarioWare costume, for Pete's sake. Like Wario Land, I love the zaniness of it. Wario has abilities. He can shoulder bash. Like there's collectibles. There's different there's so many it seems more complex in a way than Mario Advance is, or the not Mario Advance, just Mario platformers in general. Like it's so polished. Like I did not play Wario Land 4 on the Game Boy Advance, actually. Like Gino and I had a PSP that we modded, and that's how we played a lot of games like Pokemon Emerald, and Wario Land 4 was the main one on there. But like yeah, I just think the pixel art of that game is fantastic as well. And it did relatively well too. So like that's why I don't understand this massive shift Nintendo has done with Wario. Like they just avoiding acknowledging that he was in platforming games before. Also, just like I don't know. Like I just think Wario Land 4 also had the Wario in a sweet car that was brought into like Mario Kart Double Dash and like all the other like appearances where you see Wario in his like purple
Cadillac.
sports car. Yeah, awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
But just those games had so much personality. Just like, and I know WarioWare does too, and it has a lot of original characters and stuff like that. But Wario Land does too, and it just does not get enough love.
I was thank you for mentioning the PSP, Matteo, because it was gonna I did want to mention one game that I did play on the PSP as an honorable mention, but I didn't know how to bring it up properly, and that was the fan translation of Mother 3. Adriano actually got me the the actual ROM and everything for it. I'm not nominating it. This is just like a nice little
No, you should
like
nominate it.
an aside.
You absolutely
thing
should.
is-
You played it.
Well, yeah, I'm the only one in our friend group that's actually played the Mother 3, and I understand why it will not get localized, but I can also understand why people would say no, we need to have this. But like it was such like the game was funny. I laughed. It was sad. I cried. The journey that Lucas goes on, like dealing with loss, and that was the entire theme of the game. Is like, okay, dealing with the loss of a family member, like. Without spoiling too much, like Lucas, I get the like Lucas and his family, they deal with an immense tragedy at the very beginning of the game, and it's just basically like he's learning to grow up and live with this sadness and how he deals with it, and it was just a very beautifully crafted story. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't like absorb too much of it because like I wanted to play the game and it was challenging. The RPG like itself, like the game was like the gameplay was tight because you had to like time your attacks with the music of the song that was playing, and you would deal more damage based on um, the timing of your attacks. Also, it had this like bleeding kind of system in it, where like for instance, if you took fatal damage, your health didn't go from like 12 to 0. It would tick down. It would go 11, 10, 9. It's like as if your character's bleeding out, and you had time, even though you were technically fatally wounded, to heal yourself if you could, which was really really cool. So it kind of like it was forgiving, but it was also really punishing as well with those timing mechanics because you had to nail those crits in order to like advance past certain things. It was just great characters, great design. Just the music was fantastic. It was a great Mother game, and I can also understand why Reggie never gave us Mother 3.
Yeah. Like the whole like Mother 3 now, and like unfortunately, like I feel like the whole meme of it not being re-released or ported or whatever or localized, that's like in a way kind of taking away from the game because like Nintendo is pretty mum about it. Like they're not. It's probably like I don't think it's gonna happen. So like the only way to play it is to condone like emulation and stuff like that, which I really don't like. But in a way, like if you really want to play it, there are ways to play it.
I understand why Nintendo would have qualms, not qualms, I should say, like would have reservations about
Yeah,
translating it and stuff.
but
There are
localizing is there's always things that get
oh
changed
yeah,
in localizing. So
I know,
I
but
mean,
then you lose the spirit of that game. That's the thing
think
though. Like all of the quirky stuff is what makes it great.
true, but
I think
let's
the
just
main reason it didn't
philosophically,
get localized is just the hard
it
facts that
just
like
doesn't do well.
sales. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it like, and that's the thing is, I think like, sure, you're right, Gino, but also remember that that's because that's your first experience of it, and you're like, well, it would be changed. But if your first experience with it was the changed version, and they did it
Yeah.
in a way that was still tasteful and still kept the main themes, I think you wouldn't have noticed, right? I think for
Yeah.
you, like playing it, if it gets localized, will obviously have an effect, knowing what it
Yeah.
was, but like not knowing wouldn't have had much. But
Yeah. And
I'm hoping one day Nintendo just it's a Nintendo Direct and you see a red screen and suddenly it says Mother 4, and then that's
yeah.
it. And then everybody gets upset because they announced Mother 4 before they released Mother 3.
Yeah, that'd be pretty funny. Um, but yeah, I was totally prepared to talk about a completely other game before I went on the Mother 3 one. But I think I'll give you guys a chance to say something before I say the one that I would like
Yeah,
to say.
sure. Well, I'll
Yeah.
go next. See, I have 3 games on here, and I genuinely think if I say I'm gonna go with the one I'm gonna say because I genuinely think if I say this one, you and Gino are gonna say the other two, like in your next ones. I'm fairly certain, and we'll see.
mhm.
I will see after Gino has said his if the other two get covered. But the one I'm gonna say, which has already been mentioned, is WarioWare did debut on the Game Boy Advance. Um, Now I don't necessarily think that this is going to make it into our top 5, but I think it's worth mentioning because it is a strong start for the series. It did only get better. That's the thing. And that's why I think I wouldn't recommend it, is because it did get better. Like substantially so. But I think it's worth mentioning that WarioWare Inc. is a really fun game on Game Boy Advance. and it's definitely worth seeing the roots. So it's there. I'm not going to throw it on the list though, because I don't think that any of us feel like it would be in the top 5. So I'm just going to keep it just as a mention. But I'll let you and Gino nominate your next 2.
Well, I have 3 games still left on my short list, and I know one of them for sure no one's going to say, and I hope the other 2 do get said. But I'm going to say one of the ones that I think we'll all agree with, and that is Fire Emblem.
Yeah, that's the one I thought you'd say.
Yeah, Fire Emblem. It's just called Fire Emblem in the West. I forgot. I think it's Binding Blade or Blazing Blade. I always get them mixed up. But that's
I think Binding was the second one.
Yeah, so that's the official name of it in Japan, but it's just known as Fire Emblem in North America. It was the very first game localized and released in the West. It's definitely in my top 3 favorite Fire Emblem games of all time, and I've played almost all of them that have come out since. All the ones that have been available in the West, with the exception of a few. And I just think the cast of characters and like the Fire Emblem tactical RPG gameplay is fantastic. It's classic. The sprite art's phenomenal. But the main thing about this game is the story and the characters. And I love the story of Hector, Eliwood, and Lynn when they go on their adventure. Those characters are so great. Their friendship is, and the things they go on. The side characters in that game are fantastic. The villain is really menacing, and like, that's the thing with Fire Emblem games is I find the villains are pretty hit or miss. But and also the music is fantastic. I love the way like the paralogs are like integrated in with the main campaign, and like the fact that if you don't do specific tasks during the mission, like talking to specific characters or saving a character or whatever, you might not get those paralogs. You might get other paralogs that other players didn't get. Because like Jules, we played this game simultaneously when it came out on the Wii U Virtual Console, and like I had some missions that you didn't.
I played it on the no, you're right. Sorry, yes, you're right.
Yeah, we had missions that like we didn't I had some missions that I played. You had some that you didn't play, or that like you played that I didn't play. So like, there's a lot of replay value in that sense because like you can just do different runs of the game and get different stories and stuff. There is some things though, like late game, if you really know how to level your characters and like level specific units, it does get pretty broken, but it's fun in a way. But yeah, like I love this Fire Emblem game. I really hope that they do like an Echoes type remake or something with this because I just think the cast of characters is fantastic. Like this is one of my favorite worlds in Fire Emblem.
Speaking of other favorite worlds and everything, I am surprised no one has mentioned any of the Zelda games. I would like to nominate Minish Cap because that is probably like aside from I want to say A Link to the Past, which was also remade on the Game Boy Advance. Minish Cap, probably one of my favorite 2D Zelda games, like bar none. It is fantastic. The sprite art and the pixel art, absolutely amazing. It feels really, really fluid. The Picori or the Minish people are very, very cute, and they're it's just like I really like the world, like this version of Hyrule. Like you have the traditional sized Hyrule, and then you also have this mini micro Hyrule that were like, for instance, like the first boss of the game, and it's on the box. It's actually on the box art as well. The first boss of the game is just a regular Chu, like a regular Choo-Choo, a green Choo-Choo that you have to defeat while you're super tiny, and it's just like, it's just really funny and creative. Where it's just like, okay, here's this trivial enemy that like you slaughter by the thousands, like out in the overworld, where you can just like you can beat them, piece of cake, stun them, slash with your sword, done. And now it's like a 3-stage boss fight. and it's just really, really funny and clever. And I just really enjoy. Like, you could tell the devs had a lot of fun with this game, and the kinstone mechanics where you could like go out and you meet certain people and you have these little rocks and you kind of like solve a puzzle with them, and it changes the world. I think there was like a whole like trading quest using the kinstones. You had to help these Gorons like get to the back end of a cave, and I can never remember exactly what was back there because I don't think I ever finished it. But I had a lot of fun with it, and Minish had some great items. They brought back the Rock's Cape item from the 2D Capcom games. They brought in a new item, the Mole Mitts, which was just, I thought they were really cool. That allowed Link to like dig through the earth, and yeah, it was just good fun. I
Gust
enjoyed
jar.
Minish. Oh yeah, the Gust jar, and then they eventually brought it back in I think Skyward as the Gust Bellows.
And we thought the Gus Bellows and the Mole and the Magma Mitts were like in a way like paying tribute to Minish Cap. But
Yeah.
Gino, just quickly, Minish Cap was also made by Capcom.
Yeah.
But also I really like Minish Cap was on my list. That was the other major one that I had on there, the last major one. I think honestly, Minish Cap is one of the most underrated Zelda games ever made.
It's great. It is.
It's
It
so
is
good.
fantastic.
I love the fact that like to me that's like I really liked that they used the Wind Waker kind of used the Wind Waker aesthetic but made it their own in a way. Like it's not a direct like on the promotional image it looks like Wind Waker, but when it's put like when you're playing the game it doesn't feel like the Wind Waker art style. Like it seems to like they twisted it a little bit.
Yeah.
But like
and that's not even talking about what they did with the villain and everything. Vati in that game was great. And he kind of had like almost this shadow like the Dark Link kind of vibe with like with just like the flowing hair, the same color aesthetic. He had like the dark hat and everything too, and then like it was just this humanoid version of Vati. They gave the giant eyeball, like the giant evil eyeball, like a proper like backstory, kind of like how Ganondorf really fleshed out the villain Ganon from like in Ocarina of Time. Like you saw the backstory, you saw where this villain came from, and you can kind of understand their ticks instead of just being like, oh, it's just this evil eye that wants to take over Hyrule and somehow is connected with wind. Okay.
and also
Right.
had the formation of the four sword. Like that was something about in the game too, right?
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of cool like because that's like canonically if you believe in the Zelda timeline, it's the second game canonically, and I just like it's, once again like Minish Cap is so underrated. It really is a fantastic game. Highly recommend it. Like Eslo is a fantastic. We didn't even talk about Eslo.
Eslo is a fantastic
Eslo's one of my
companion.
favorite companions in any Zelda game.
He's
So
so sassy. He's just a grumpy old man.
so
And like
Yeah.
yeah, Eslo eventually like you eventually like he was really annoying at first, but then you like warm up to him and stuff. It's just really touching like what like that character's journey. And yeah, I completely forgot about like the Four Swords tie-in, and like a lot of people thought the Picori blade from like the first one like was kind of representative of the Master Sword, and like the Master Sword turned into the Four Sword, and there was like a bunch of theories and stuff based on that. It was just good fun.
Yeah.
And not to mention that like Four Swords as its own standalone game was included with the like one of the that was included with A Link to the Past. Yeah, it was just more like a fun like side thing that they could sell with A Link to the Past.
Yeah, it was like a multiplayer Zelda.
And they used those assets to build Minish, which is like definitely like just great stuff. I
Yeah.
really like Minish. Can't talk enough about it.
Well, I can say, Matteo and Gino, you did admirably. You said the games I predicted you'd say.
But what I'm still waiting for Matteo to say a very specific game that
I'm ending on it. I'm ending on it.
Oh, I know what
Okay.
game you're gonna say now.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Say it.
So you don't have one to add, Jules?
Nope, I'm done.
Well, this would not be a Hub World episode, and I feel like I would be doing a disservice to myself more than anything if I did not mention a Banjo-Kazooie game. Um, and the Game Boy Advance does have a Banjo-Kazooie game, and once again, it's a very underappreciated, overlooked Banjo-Kazooie game. Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge.
Ooh.
This game originally was like a Game Boy Color game. It started off development as a Game Boy Color game. It's what you would expect, honestly, Banjo to be on portable hardware, like a 16-bit hardware. Like they tried to make a 3D game in a 2D on a two like what is a so like normally a 2D on 2D hardware. Like Banjo obviously won't have all his moves, and it what they did though worked pretty well. Like yeah, there's a few camera problems, but overall, I think like it's set between Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, where like Grunty comes back, but goes back in time to try to prevent Banjo and Kazooie from ever meeting each other, which I think is fantastic. Bozai, which is like Bottle's like ancestor, is a really fun like companion character who teaches you the ropes. But like there's a few things in the game that, like I said, don't work. Like there's mini games that are kind of like you kind of forced to do, which aren't great. But like I said, there's a lot of stuff that is really overlooked. The level design's pretty good. The fact that Banjo's transformations are back are really cool as well. Like, and the transformations I found are really cool. Like, I think there's a tank banjo, candle banjo. Like, there's a rat that's really funny. The music's fantastic in the game. It's just all you would want from the original Banjo-Kazooie formula in handheld form. And unfortunately, it's the last time we ever got that original Banjo formula in a game. But like I said, I don't expect this to get on the list because it literally is not anywhere except Game Boy Advance. Or if you have a shitty flip phone from like the early 2000s, you could play it on that.
Wait,
But
really?
I don't. Yeah, it was ported on like Motorola phones, and it's awful. But yeah, I don't expect it to make it on the list, but it deserves a shutout. A shutout. Like this game, unfortunately, it's not playable. But if it was, I really would hope that people would play it. Like it's really good. Like I just said earlier, I don't condone emulating. Well, maybe I'll reverse that. Like play this game. I've been trying to get Jules to play it for a while, and he hasn't.
And Matteo, what about
So-
Banjo Pilot? The Banjo-Kazooie
No.
strictly airplane racing game.
I cannot. I'm not a big fan of Banjo Pilot, so I will not be
I am.
nominating it.
Any game where you can play with
But-
Jolly Roger is a game for me.
Yo
Okay,
ho.
I think unless you have one, I think we have our list.
I kind of want to shout out the Mega Man Battle Network games just because I had a lot of fun playing those.
Yeah, I was
And
about to say that too.
I think they're very fun and kind of overlooked.
Mhm.
But like, sorry, not overlooked because like I think a bunch of fans actually just got the original like Mega Man Battle Network games and like made some kind of like online competitive multiplayer for it. And it seemed really intriguing. I always tried getting into that game, but like I was in that phase of my life where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna download Virtual Boy and like do emulating and stuff. And because I was emulating and I didn't want like my dad's all like, don't download video games on the internet. I don't want to get a virus on my computer. I kind of stopped playing.
Well,
those
Gino,
ones.
I have them. I have
Wait,
them
you
on
do?
Game Boy Advance. Like I have the carts. Yeah, so if you want to play them, you can play them. I
No,
would
but
just
then I
like to
feel like
quickly.
batteries.
Yeah, it's fine. Game Boy Player, Gino. You can do it that way.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I will just shout out for Yako, the Mega Man Zero games. I know he likes those a lot, and I would just like to say that I know the Castlevania games on Game Boy Advance are very critically acclaimed and beloved to a lot of people, but none of us have played them, so that's why we have not said them. So,
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's
we're
probably
ready.
a good time to mention that. Yeah.
time to deliberate.
Okay,
Yeah. If
so
Adriano was here, he definitely would have recommended them.
well, here we go. Okay, so here's the final list, like the starting list, the short list. in case you want to write it down or remember, but it is Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, Metroid Zero Mission, Metroid Fusion, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team, Pokemon Emerald, Sonic Advance, Yu-Gi-Oh! The Sacred Cards, Wario Land 4, Mother 3, Fire Emblem, Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap, and Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge. Is there anything that we feel we can axe immediately?
Yes.
Yeah, I will be the first one to say this. As much as I love Mother 3, the only way you can play it in the West, in your language, is to emulate. And if you're going by the original hardware and everything, you're gonna want to get a Japanese cart, and that might be expensive. So it might not be as accessible to everyone.
And you would need a Japanese Game Boy Advance because they're region locked carts. So
Yeah, fair enough. That's a valid point. So yeah, we can take that off.
As much as I love that game and believe that it eventually should come out,
yep,
there's no official way.
That's valid. I will remove Yu-Gi-Oh! The Sacred Cards if there's no objection, as I believe that was more of just a mention, less so one that I believe is an essential.
And as much as it pains me, I will cut Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge because very similarly to Mother 3, this game has never been re-released, and it's pretty hard to like. It's not expensive, but like these like it can't be played on anything else aside from a Game Boy Advance. So
fair enough.
And select mobile phones.
I think it's honestly would be harder to play on the phone to get the phone to play on that. So
hey, but then you have a phone.
So we can now go to
you have phones, right?
No, the Nokia phones are not accessible.
Yeah.
They're indestructible.
But honestly,
they wouldn't break.
Matteo, I know I haven't played it, but Game Boy Advance is such an all-star lineup. I think even if it were accessible, it probably might not make.
I 100%. I don't think it would be in the top in our like 5. I would recommend that game to Banjo fans more than anything. So like you have to be a Banjo-Kazooie fan to play that game, I think.
Okay. Well, if we are ready, what we can do is we can either start picking out what we think absolutely needs to be there, or we can start taking things off.
Oh gosh. I feel like a lot of these have to be there. Like I can already see like 4 or 5. But like okay, are we gonna have multiple platformers? Are we gonna have multiple Metroidvania games on here?
We may.
So
we may not.
I would honestly, and I don't think this will be an issue to cut this. Gino, I think because we played it, Sonic Advance. I think we could probably cut it, because like it doesn't really do anything that's super unique. It's just a Sonic game on a portable console, and there's been that before on Game Gear and stuff like that.
But it's a really good Sonic game.
It is really good, yes, but that's the thing. Like,
compared to the other titles on this list,
I don't think it's in the same. I don't think it's in the same tier really as a lot of these games. So, realistically,
but the snow level music.
Yes, I know.
The snow level.
Okay.
So I think we could cut Sonic Advance.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 8 games left, so 3 gotta go. We can either deliberate what needs to go, or we can start deciding what needs to be on.
Yeah, I think we should decide what needs to be on right now, and then we'll come naturally.
Well, naturally
to what? Yeah.
Well, I can say I think, and this will be unanimous between the 3 of us, that the one that we can absolutely all agree on is Pokemon Emerald is on this list.
Yes, it is.
See, this is the thing.
No, Matteo?
I'm a big fan of Gen 3, but I know I'm in the minority of this. I honestly think if you want to play a game on Generation 3, if you want to play the whole games, play Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire.
Yeah, I'm of the complete opposite opinion.
And I know I acknowledge I'm in the minority, and the reason why I'm saying that is Google how much Pokemon Emerald carts go for, and then tell me If you
Sure.
want
Is
to
that
buy,
accessible?
Okay,
you could buy
fair enough.
a cheap 3DS and Pokemon ORAS are pretty cheap. That'll probably get you like that's probably like half the value of Pokemon Emerald right there, and that's the only thing. It's just like I don't know,
Valid,
but
but
like,
I
and I
I
and I
also
think the
feel
Delta episode in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire adds more to the lore of Sinnoh, or sorry, of Hoenn, and I think
The Delta episode was really
that's
good.
really valuable to as a fan of Gen 3. I think that is
I'm
really
sorry,
important to
like
play.
I mean I'm not saying that it's not important to play those, but one, I think it would be absolutely sacrilege to not put a Pokemon game on this list. I think Pokemon Emerald is arguably one of the best Pokemon games, like, period. And my opinion is, as much as I can acknowledge that Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire do some things better, ultimately, I'm sorry, those games are fucking ugly. Pokemon Emerald is beautiful. Sprite art
It
is
is.
so
It is.
beautiful, and I fucking hate the art style of Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. It takes so much out of that game.
I was
But
gonna say you're not one of those people that say
also
too much
takes
water,
out
are you?
it also takes out HMs. A lot of the HMs that like made those games a pain, but I do agree with you. It's not like saying with the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, just say like it's it's pretty like it's pretty comparable. The experiences are pretty comparable to each other with the Red Rescue Team DX compared to Red Rescue Team. Emerald and Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire are completely different because
Yeah.
Emerald didn't get remade into those games. Ruby and Sapphire got remade into those games.
And they included the
So
Delta episode, which is
and
itself very different.
yeah, and then Pokemon has changed a lot since Gen 3 as well. So like
You had all
that
you have the megas, and you have 3 entire generations more Pokemon.
exactly. So
Back in the
and
day when you
like
could
I said,
still catch them all.
I know completely in the like it's super like hot take on my part to say what I just said, but
And like,
I do
yeah,
agree. I think it
I
should be on the list, but it's worth mentioning. Like, if you want to buy a copy of Emerald, you got to pay up. It's really expensive.
well, a loose
So,
copy isn't that expensive. And then the other thing to consider is, realistically, we also have to remember we are talking Game Boy Advance, and it's actually like a lot of Game Boy Advance games are just hard to access.
mhm. But
So
like
that's
these
the
games,
thing.
the Nintendo never re-released them on Virtual Console.
I know,
Generation 3
but
Pokemon. So like that's what
even the ones that they did release on Virtual Console, the only console that you can get those on is a Wii U, which is
yeah.
already. So that's what I mean. Is like I think all Game Boy Advance just has a pretty hard like
It's
access.
a high
So
barrier of
so
entry,
that's what I
yeah.
mean. Is like if somebody who doesn't have a Wii U wants to play something else we're about to recommend, they're probably gonna have to buy a $400 system to buy the emulated game. Whereas like Emerald, I feel like even if you have to pay 50, $60 for a cartridge, like,
I wish it was that cheap.
is it not?
No,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's like 200
Well,
bucks for a
I
card.
remember Justin saying he got his for like 45, but maybe he just got someone like maybe
You
he
got
just
a
found it off
deal.
of someone.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, I think Pokemon Emerald could like it should be on the list. So I have no
Yeah.
problem with that.
Okay. Well, Pokemon Emerald then. Is there anything else that we feel
Um,
absolutely is on the
I
list? Because I think there's
I think
two, but
I also forgot to shout out Advance Wars, and I look forward to seeing
yeah, I'm
what
surprised you
those
didn't.
games are like. Because I've never played them, but I'm looking
Oh,
forward to because the two Game Boy Advance games are the ones that are in the Switch
yeah,
collect remakes that are coming out.
Well, it's
yeah,
called Advance Wars because they were on the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Um,
we should continue
I
deliberation because we are getting
Yeah.
quite into
I
time.
think I think Fire Emblem deserves to be on the list. I think that's
I
the best. I think that is probably one of the like of what I've played, one of the best tactical RPGs, at least one of the best games in the Fire Emblem series. Period. So like that game is really special, and I think there's nothing like at least what we've nominated. There's nothing like it.
while I agree
So
with you in some capacity. I'm not ready to put Fire Emblem on the list quite yet because Fire Emblem, at the end of the day, is an RPG, and there are quite a few RPGs on this list, and there's already one in the 5, and I feel like I'm not ready to say that Fire Emblem's one I want to put on the list. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but I'm not ready to say it should be. Personally,
All right.
that's my
Honestly,
Um,
though, Jules, I would be right there with you if Pokemon Red Rescue Team didn't get a remake.
But the
and I
remake is
know-
worse.
Eh,
I
well,
know, but
haven't-
it's a pretty similar experience though, right? Like that's the thing.
Yes, but the definitive way to play it is still on Game Boy Advance.
But
And
you
just because it
said
got
yourself,
remade,
but also you said it yourself that the series only gets better. Like there's a few like the next few games are
but there's
way
still
better than it, right?
Sure, but I think the difference being that a game like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, that's a very story-driven game. It's hard to quantify the game just based off of gameplay. Because sure, it only gets better with the next game, in my opinion. But I think when you're talking something like RPG or something that's story-heavy, it's hard to quantify saying, well, the next game's better because this is still in itself its own unique experience because
Yeah,
it's
but
so
like
narratively driven.
I know, but like if the story beats are pretty much exactly the
They're
same,
not.
and you can get, oh, they're not.
Not in the next game. No, absolutely not. They're
No,
completely.
I'm talking. No, I'm talking Red. I'm talking strictly Red and Red XD.
Oh well, no, it's just Mystery Dungeon XD. And I get that there's a remake, but I don't think there being a remake means that we shouldn't recommend it. Like I don't think that that's necessarily a big reason to not recommend something.
Yeah, but in the past we have taken games like, for instance, like Mario 64 off the list because like there was a remake of it available that was a lot more readily available and things. Like we have set a precedent in the past where like if there was a remake available that pretty much did the exact same thing, we weren't going to have it on.
I'm going to contend that because that's not the reason Mario 64 wasn't on, and you're right that there.
I know I'm using
There
Mario
has-
64 as like
you
it was
are-
a bad
you are
example because
correct.
Odyssey.
You are
is the
correct
thing.
that we have used, that we absolutely have used remakes as a reason to say like we're not going to put this on, but usually it's when there's like a superior remake, like there's a reason to go play the remake, like there's no reason to come back and play the old one. Whereas,
Yeah.
as somebody who's played all the Mystery Dungeon games, the remake is not the same experience. They've added a lot of stuff that really changes the fundamentals of the game. And I really think experiencing it in the sprite art, experiencing it in the way it was made to be, is a very unique experience. I'm not saying it should be on the list, but I'm saying I don't think
Yeah.
those are valid reasons to
Yeah.
remove it.
Yeah. And for instance, like using the remake as a bit of a springboard into the next one here, as much as I love Super Mario as much as I love Superstar Saga, what do we think about maybe potentially taking this one off because of Superstar
Well,
Saga plus Bowser's Minions?
I still
This
don't
is the
think
thing.
that I still don't
It's
think
still the exact same game,
I know, but I don't
but
think
they
that
added
that
that extra
means-
mode.
I don't think that. See, I'm of the opinion that I don't think remakes necessarily mean you shouldn't, like, for something like Superstar Saga. So for example, the only time we really used that remake argument and it actually had weight was actually when we talked about Metroid 1 back in our NES classics. And we were like, well, there's a
Mhm.
vastly superior, much more playable, heavily improved version of Metroid 1 in Metroid Zero Mission. So there's no reason to play this game as Metroid 1. Whereas I don't think that's the case with Superstar Saga. I don't think you're losing
Yep.
anything if you play the original.
I think
at
you're
all.
gaining if you play the original because I personally do not like the art style of
I agree.
the 3DS
I
Mario and
agree.
Luigi games, and the Bowser's Minion stuff doesn't necessarily. It's not a negative thing, but like it isn't good enough to be something that makes you want to play those games.
Yeah.
So
And like it's the same argument when we talked about like the Zelda games when we did our N64 ones. Because if we were looking at remakes, then that would mean that the 3D remakes would have automatically made those games not viable for the N64 ones, but I think ultimately it was, well, you're still playing like even the 3D versions while they visually look better, like it's still like they're still like the N64 ones are just as good as the remakes, right?
Mhm.
Like there's nothing
Yeah.
worse about them, and I think that's the case for Superstar Saga and Red Rescue Team. Is I don't think their remakes are anything more than just a slight visual upgrade, and in fact, some of the changes they made kind of don't preserve the original intention, and I think that's the case with Superstar Saga. And I think like Superstar Saga as a game, I just think of Game Boy Advance when I think of, and
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
So
I just wanted to bring this up just to like give us some other things to think about, right? Like, I still think like those two games are absolutely fantastic, and like Superstar Saga is my favorite in the Mario and Luigi series. Also, it's just something extra to think about, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
So
um,
this is the thing. So by that now, we basically talked about half of the games on the list that are like haven't been nominated
Now,
or that have been nominated, but we can't decide on any of those
now I'm
yet. What to
willing
do with
to.
them?
Well, here's the thing: as I'm willing to drop Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, not because of there's a remake. Like that's just the point. Is I don't think the remake is really a viable option. But I'm willing to drop it because we already have a Pokemon game on
Mhm.
like confirmed on the list. It is an RPG, which we already have a couple on, and like from my perspective, it's probably the weakest of the three RPGs that are remaining on our short list. And also because um, it has been like the next game is better, and it also was on two other systems, so it's like fine, like I can drop that. Um, but yeah, so I think that's okay. I'll drop Pokemon Mystery Dungeon.
So,
So we need to remove two of these. Well, here's the thing. Like realistically, are we keeping both Metroid games here?
I don't think so.
no, I don't think so
So why don't
either.
we do that? Why don't we get rid of one? Because then we only have to decide one that's not going on the list.
I okay. I honestly like. I think Zero Mission's way better than Metroid Fusion. I don't know how I don't know the vibe of the about in the podcast right now what you guys think, but like my vote is with Zero Mission.
Okay.
So
Yeah. How about
I
I'm
you?
played Zero
torn.
Mission. I've only played Zero Mission once, and I've also played Fusion once. I played Fusion more recently, but I had a way better experience playing Zero Mission. Playing
Yeah.
like honestly, and
But
like that
two
game
space
blew me
pirates,
away.
Mateo.
Two
Two space
space pirates.
pirates.
Yep. Two
Two
space
Space
pirates.
Pirates is Metroid Zero Mission, Gino.
Yeah.
I know, but two space
Well, here's
pirates.
my arguments. So I've played Zero Mission much more recently than I have Fusion. So my memory on Fusion's a little muggy, but I remember my first playthrough of Fusion being a very like I really enjoyed it. My first playthrough of Zero Mission was I also really enjoyed it. But my big argument against Zero Mission is that I've always felt like the original Metroid and Zero Mission were just lesser versions of Super Metroid because you do go through pretty much the exact same areas, the same landscapes, similar bosses, but there's less of it. I do feel like Zero Mission inherently, while it updates a lot of stuff from the original game, it is still inherently held back by some of the poor design choices of the original Metroid game. And that's like having recently watched Riley play through it, I felt like it was very evident that like some like just like areas and like trying to get through some things were just like very like old school gamey in like the sense that they were like designed to just be like the game like was inherently designed to prolong itself by making things overly complicated or like overly hidden like not because it was like some of the things that like Riley when he was looking for like air how to access like areas it wasn't even like obvious and it wasn't even like he missed something it was just because he didn't bomb like some random block on the map that had no indication he had to bomb it and it was just that old school like NES vibe of like just try everything on every block of every single level until you find something just to artificially prolong the game and I think that's my gripe with Zero Mission is I do feel like it's it does hold a few of the relics of Metroid 1, and because it's in the exact same location and it has the exact same vibe as Super Metroid, I feel like Fusion's a much more unique experience. And I feel like if we've already recommended Super Metroid to our viewer or our listeners for the SNES one, I would feel way more comfortable telling them to try out Fusion, which feels like it has its own identity, than Zero Mission, which just feels like Super Metroid Lite. If that makes
See,
sense.
that's the thing, because like Metroid 1 did come out before like Metroid 1's the first game, right? So technically Super Metroid is going to the locations of the original Metroid, but I do what you meant from like a gameplay standpoint and a, let's say, like an artistic, like the sprite art and stuff, it's very, very similar to Super Metroid. But I didn't get that, honestly. When I played through the game, I had such a blast playing that game. I don't know, maybe I picked up on something that Riley didn't, and I don't remember getting stuck in that game at all, to be honest with you. The only time I got stuck was not because I didn't find something, it's just because I kept dying at a certain part. But
Do Spice Pirates?
I didn't, not there. But it's just like it's honestly, these games are so similar in a lot of ways. It's literally just like they're both so good. It's like flipping a coin, which one should be on here. They're both deserving. I don't think that we should have a list with two Metroid games on there just because the experiences are so similar. But for me, I can't stress enough. Like, I had such a blast playing Zero Mission, and like if I had to vote for one, that would be the my choice. Honestly, like.
Yeah. And like, okay, so I think it's valid. Like, I'm not trying to convince you otherwise, and you like make some really good points. I can't get away from the fact that ultimately Super Metroid was while it was its own game and it had its own story, it is very much an enhanced version of the original Metroid. And while I'm not saying Zero Mission doesn't have its own identity, I just think like it's like when we were talking about like Zelda and like comparing like the Zelda games and like what's a unique experience and things like that. And I'm not talking about the N64 Bloodbath, but I'm talking about like even when we're talking about like Zelda 1 and we're saying things like, well, Link to the Past is like a similar vibe but like a better experience. Like the reason I'm having reservations about Zero Mission is when I'm looking about the series variety, I feel like Zero Mission and Fusion are so close that you really could give it to either of them because they're both really great, but I do feel like Fusion is very much its own identity. And especially in
Oh
the
yeah.
context of like now, like we've already recommended Super Metroid, so I feel like if our viewers went back and played Super Metroid and now they play Zero Mission, while they'll appreciate it, it will feel like a lesser version of Super Metroid. And especially now with Metroid Dread on the horizon, I'm even more inclined to recommend Metroid Fusion, because it's just, it's a unique. It is, in my opinion, like because you're right, like it's completely different, like the traditional suit isn't there, all that stuff, but in my opinion it's like in a way it's almost like the most unique Metroid experience out there right now because it actually is so different, yet it still is very much what Metroid is. So I don't
At
Yeah,
know.
the same time, but
I
at the
have to
same
say,
time,
oh,
are we gonna, like, once again, this is another important thing with our like with our recommendations here, is that would you recommend someone play the fourth game in a series or the first game in a series,
I
right?
think with
If you
Metroid it
want
doesn't matter.
you want to be invested for the long haul, I think it'd be better suited for people to play Zero Mission. But I do agree with what you're saying with, it's, for me it's not, it's just completely different than like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. It's completely different. But
It's completely
um uh,
I
I
like
don't know.
and
I
I
I let me be the tiebreaker in this
Jen,
one here because I would love both of them to be on here. I
I
just
would
feel
too.
like the tone of Metroid Fusion, I personally feel is different enough to warrant that this be the one that we put on the list. Just just because like, and like even Jules says it very well as well with like, okay, we're getting Dread in a few months. It would be nice to know where Samus has been the past 20 years.
Yeah.
Almost, right? And like, and this is not documenting like just the pure value out of the video game that you're getting out of Metroid Fusion. Sorry, is sorry, not Fusion, that you're getting out of Zero Mission. Like you definitely get more value for the dollar spent on Zero Mission, because you're getting the Zero Mission part of it, which is the Zero Suit Samus, and that's her, like that version of Samus's debut, right? You are getting that, plus you're getting the entire redone first game. So it's like you're
And
getting
the
two
original
games in
first
one.
game, which I didn't know about. So
Yeah, so like there's definitely an argument to be made. I think if we didn't get Metroid Dread announced recently, I would say Zero Mission, but because Dread is coming up and I feel like we should know where Samus is as a character at this point, I'm going to say Fusion. But the thing is though, both are fantastic games. And like again, you said it right when you said it's you could flip a coin.
Yeah,
yeah,
for
So
sure.
I will be the
Well-
tiebreaker and say Fusion.
fair enough.
Okay.
I believe in democracy. So
I
Yeah,
love democracy.
And if we were doing simple,
I love the Republic.
if we did believe in true democracy, yeah, I will say other lists would be different. Tee.
I mean, but
well,
no, I'm not
Yeah.
going to.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. We're not going down that
I'll
rabbit
go
hole again.
off the record what I will say to you after the podcast.
so
Yeah.
anyways, Fusion is a lock now, right? Like
Yes.
it was going to be
Yeah.
either one of those games.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have Fusion and Pokemon Emerald
So now we
are
basically
the
just.
two locks.
So now we just basically need to decide which one
Which one doesn't
are
make it?
not adding. Okay.
Yeah.
I would actually like to make a nomination for which one we should actually add. I am going to say Wario Land 4, because when Matteo was talking this game up here, he did correctly state that we haven't had an experience like this in a long time since Wario Land Shake It. I would even argue since Wario Master of Disguise, where you have Wario in his different transformations doing a traditional 2D platforming game instead of something that's kind of like micro games designed for kids that can't pay attention for more than 30 seconds.
Oh, shots fired.
Shots fired.
Jeez.
Well, that's the thing. That's the whole reason why I could never get into WarioWare, is because like I'm just like my attention span is too long for this game, and that shouldn't be a problem. I'm sorry, that's no disrespect to the people that like the the WarioWare franchise. Just I feel like Wario Land is something that's unique to the original Game Boys, and it
Yeah.
kind of stopped when we went from Game Boy to DS,
Yeah. And
like Nintendo.
But I feel
And
like
it's unique. It's so unique. It's just you
And,
have
like, the thing
you have
is-
Wario's transformations.
Here's the thing.
You have all the unique
you know what,
enemies
Gino?
and everything. It's just
I don't even think you need to argue this one.
Yeah.
Do we all agree with this? Because I agree.
I think
with
yeah.
this.
I completely agree.
So let's
I
just do
completely
it.
Oh, okay.
agree.
I thought I
No,
was
you
being
don't need to
challenged
make
on
an
this one.
argument.
Like, oh.
No, you don't need to make an argument because
You know, I nominated the dang game. I wanted to be
And
on the list.
and it's the only platformer we have there. And I think you're right.
It's the
Like,
best.
what you
It's
said.
the best platformer on the system.
There's not
honestly.
many-
that isn't a port or a remake.
There aren't
or
many.
a
That's the thing. There aren't many that
Right.
aren't ports or remakes. But that being said, I think Gino ultimately hit it on the nail on the head, which is Wario Land is so like iconically Game Boy, and we didn't do a Game Boy Color list, and we're doing a Game Boy Advance list. It would be a shame if there wasn't a Wario Land game on here. It's just like
And
Pokemon.
this is the best Wario
It
Land
is.
game.
It's so good.
Because the main gripes that I had with the original, like the 3 games prior to it,
We're all fixed in this game.
are all fixed because you take damage now, and like if you die, you have to start from the beginning. Like the other games didn't, like it were way easier. Like this
Yeah.
game has a challenge to it. So
Okay, well, Wario Land 4, that's good. We all agree there.
Yeah.
So now we got to deliberate between the final 3. I like Minish Cap a lot. Like, I actually really do like Minish Cap for all the reasons you said. But I've always had the opinion of Minish Cap that Minish Cap is like the most average Zelda game there is. Like, it's great, but it's not.
wouldn't go
anything
that far.
phenomenal.
I wouldn't call it average
The
because it did a lot of.
I-
It made the
but-
Four Swords
But it's
gameplay
average.
work.
Okay, but it's average in the sense that Zelda is a phenomenal series. So the average Zelda game, the one that's just in the middle of the pack, is a great game. But there's nothing inherently special or amazing about it. Like I don't even think it's in the top 3 2Ds for me personally, and that's why I'm like looking at that. I'm like, I don't know. And then the thing with Fire Emblem is that while the game itself is quite hard and maybe it's not super accessible to newcomers, that's what old Fire Emblem was, which has been completely destroyed by new Fire Emblem. And that Fire Emblem game, while it's hard, it's not ridiculous. Like it's not like
Yeah,
it's not
it's
like
not like
Radiant
Path to
Dawn.
Radiance or
Path of Radiance is actually
Shadow Dragon. Like,
Radiance is actually not that bad, but Radiant Dawn is pretty rough.
what was the one on Wii that has like the messed up difficulties?
Radiant
What
Dawn.
was that? Was
Radiant
Radiant?
Dawn.
That's
Yeah,
Radiant Dawn.
Yeah,
that
but-
one's
But that's
tough.
the thing is Fire Emblem Awakening very much like starting with Fire Emblem Awakening and going into Fates and Three Houses very much created modern Fire Emblem, which while it retains like the style and the gameplay, it doesn't retain the like soul of what old Fire Emblem was. And there's very few old Fire Emblem games that are available in the West. And the only ones really are Fire Emblem, Fire Emblem the Sacred Swords, which is also on Game Boy Advance, and then Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, which are ridiculously hard to find. And like Path of Radiance, don't even try. You're not finding it. It's like almost impossible to find. And then
Took me a long time to get that game.
yeah, and then Radiant Dawn, while it's a little bit more accessible, is also way too fucking hard. Like I would not recommend Radiant Dawn to most people, even though it was my first Fire Emblem game because it's so hard. And then after Radiant Dawn, we get New Age Fire Emblem. So like the reason I would recommend Fire Emblem over Minish Cap is that as much as I like Minish Cap, you can get Minish Cap's game like I don't think there's anything special that stands out about Minish Cap from other Zeldas other than like kind of like the tone
being able to
like
shrink.
Vati and like
But even at that,
like the art
the
style a little
gameplay
bit
itself
is not
But Jules, the gameplay of Minish Cap, like the thing that I really love about the Zelda series is that every game has its own like gameplay twist or something. Like in Four Swords, Four Swords, it's the multiplayer game. Link Between Worlds is this going on the wall and seeing puzzles differently. Shrinking in Minish Cap doesn't really do anything aside from like
yeah,
it's a
more
visual
of an aesthetic thing. And that's the thing is Minish
Yeah.
Cap is great aesthetically, but I just don't think it has that much to offer.
No, I would say that Minish Cap with what it did was it took that multiplayer Four Swords and was able to cram it into a single player experience and make it work way better than it ever did in its original state.
But it didn't really do
they polished that system. It was a solid game from beginning to end. It was polished.
I agree. No, I agree, but I don't actually feel like they did much with the Four Sword system itself. Like I do think that like there's aspects definitely of the story, but in terms of the gameplay, it's very much just a 2D Zelda game. I wouldn't really say that they took the Four Swords. Like I would say Four Swords Adventure took the Four Swords concept and made it into a single player experience. But I wouldn't say that Minish Cap did that. I would say Minish Cap more took the lore from Four Swords and made it into a single player experience, which I appreciate.
When I think of Minish Cap, I don't even think about Four Swords.
Yeah.
Like I those two things are completely separate in my mind.
Yeah, they are separate in my mind too.
And I do love Minish Cap, and that's the thing is like I do like it. It's cute, it's fun. I just don't think that like the only reason I feel like we're even considering it is because it has the name Zelda in its name, and we are always feeling, oh well, Zelda has to be there. And I just genuinely don't think that Game Boy Advance had a strong lineup of Zelda. Whereas like Fire Emblem, I really do think like if I'm gonna recommend Fire Emblem games to people, like this is one of those ones that I'm like, this is one of the strongest in the series. So I would absolutely recommend this one.
Yeah.
And
But don't get me wrong, like I love the characters themselves. Like freaking Hector is honestly like I was surprised and I was like vouching back before we even started the podcast when Smash came out. It's like we need an axe wielder and it's gotta be Hector for Smash and everything too, right? Because like don't get me wrong, like I love those I love the characters. I love this world of Fire Emblem. It's just that I feel like if you want to experience Fire Emblem, it's better on the 3DS.
It is, but it's different, and that's the thing is like you can say it's better, but ultimately the reason it's better is because it's more accessible and they changed things. But I do think like
you don't have to hard reset your console every time you don't want a character to die.
Yeah, but to be fair, like if you are going to play it on like a virtual console experience, you're going to get save states, which is kind of how I played the game. So you can kind of like
Yeah.
fiddle with that, but and
You
it,
can kind of cheese it a little bit.
cheese
there.
it a little bit. But I do think like
How many times Matteo would swear and like turn the game off and restart the file and everything just because he didn't want a specific character to die, or when he leveled up the stats weren't good enough.
yeah. But that's
Mhm.
old age Fire Emblem, right? Like that's what I feel like. I feel like it's a unique experience in and of itself, and I feel like it's worth playing. Like I
Yeah.
do feel like
100%.
it's way more worth playing than Minish Cap, because for me it's just like, well, Minish Cap is great. That's all I can really say about Minish Cap. And every single
Minish
time
Cap
I've
is
done
great,
my
yeah.
Zelda playthrough of all the games, Minish Cap has always been very, very securely in the middle.
Yeah. See, it's but the thing, yeah, I agree with you. It's
How
not the
about
best
this,
Zelda
Gino?
game ever. It's
I'll
not
tell
the
you
worst
what.
Zelda game ever.
I'll-
No, I'm
Oh,
not. I'm
no,
not
you
arguing.
know
No,
what?
I'm
No.
conceding that.
No,
I'm conceding
don't
this one.
concede
I know.
quite yet till you hear my offer. You give me the Eslo hat, we put Minish on this list.
No. You didn't genuinely want Minish Cap on the list, Jules. You are not a Minish fan. Eslo does not belong with you. Not now, not ever. If it's not
Dang.
good, it wasn't good enough for you before the offer. It's not good enough for you after the offer.
Very well.
Well,
So I guess that's
we got our
Oh.
list.
So
Yep.
then our 5 Game Boy Advance essential games are Pokemon Emerald, Metroid Fusion, Wario Land 4, Mario and Luigi, Superstar Saga, and Fire Emblem, also known as Fire Emblem the Blazing Blade.
Yep.
Honestly,
We
I'm
really
really
need
happy with this.
Emblem the Binding Blade released eventually in the West, whether it's in Echoes or something. Because we didn't mention that like technically, like these two games are connected, right? Like
Yeah.
Binding Blade's the sequel to Blazing Blade, which is fascinating.
Actually, Blazing Blade is the sequel to Binding Blade.
Yeah. Yes, I always get it confused, and I know what you're talking about. Like, it just
Yeah.
if the name of the game that came out here wasn't just called Fire Emblem, it'd be so much more
Yeah.
like it. We wouldn't mess up the names.
Yeah, but anyway,
But-
the one you're talking about, the Elliewood one, is actually the one we have played is the sequel, because it's technically a
Yes.
prequel of
It's a
Roy's
prequel.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would still play. Like, yeah, I would play the prequel first. I would play I wouldn't do the I would
I'd
play
have to
that
see-
one first
I would
and
have
then
to
do Roy's game.
I would have to see Roy's game first, because like I don't
Yeah.
know what the context of those games might be contextually. They like it makes more sense to play the prequel after. But I just realized we did have a very, very, very major absence from our mentions earlier, and I'm okay mentioning this now because I don't think it would have made it on our list. And I stress our list because I think I'm the only one who played it, and I didn't play enough of it to push it to the end, but it could have been on this list had this been a different group of people. But another one to recommend and let people know about, that was a great Nintendo game on Game Boy Advance, was Golden Sun, which was a fantastic
Yep.
RPG game. It's since kind of died off. But that's another one to just keep in mind.
Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland,
Yeah.
like Drill
Those Kirby
Dozer.
Those Kirby games though were like really generic though.
Hey, Nightmare in Dreamland is fantastic, and the
Nightmare in
only
Dreamland-
reason it's not here is because Kirby Adventure was in our NES.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was, I think, ultimately, while it was, I don't think it was as tough as I thought. Like, there were a lot of games, but I think we were all kind of on the same level. I think honestly, the biggest arguments were whether to put a Zelda game on or not, and
Metroids.
which Metroid. But I don't think they were that bad. So we hope you enjoyed this. The reason we chose to do GBA before we got to GameCube is we wanted to give you a little bit of a buffer, because we feel like GameCube is going to be another one of those crazy
Potential
bloodbaths.
two-parter.
Yeah,
Well,
potential
especially
2 or
with the
3.
third-party stuff, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. So we will let you know when we get to GameCube, and especially as we move forward into like Wii, maybe even doing like Xbox and things like that, where we might be adjusting our rules a little when it comes to talking about third parties or non-exclusive games. We haven't really decided how we want to handle that, because this is where that is really going to factor in. But we will let you know that when we get there. But please look forward to either GameCube or DS as our next Essentials podcast. It will be coming sometime soon. Please look forward to a ton of other podcasts that should be showing up. We have a ton of Pokemon ones we want to address. We have some Metroid ones and Mass Effect ones in the works. Maybe even a Ratchet and Clank one once Matteo finishes Rift Apart.
A lot of this stuff is revolving around Matteo finishing. Jules, how about you play Horizon and we can talk about Horizon Zero Dawn?
One day.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't put the onus just on Matteo. You got to play Horizon. You got to do it.
One day.
You got to be.
In any
Gotta be
case,
the proper Sony fan here.
thank you
Jules.
for listening. Once again, celebrate on the day of recording today was the release of Kazuya and Smash. Yet another reason why Gino's not in Smash. So remember Gino's.
Yep.
And also, we have only a few minutes left in the day, but today is Banjo's 23rd birthday. So
Happy birthday!
we should have started the podcast with that. Yeah, happy birthday.
We didn't put you on our.
Happy birthday.
Okay. Anyway, thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment. Don't if you're a Gino supporter. We're by the end of this year, we won't need to have that as our end note because you will have lost. And don't forget to follow us and listen to us on Spotify. We'll see you back again soon. So have a good night, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.